Stop. Don't move. Don't blink. Because something has already happened, and you haven't even caught the scent of it yet. Weeks ago, maybe months, maybe years, you triggered a sequence no manual could predict. A protocol buried so deep, only 3 others in history ever woke it up. You weren't aiming for it. You didn't even know it existed. But reality did. Alarms screamed in places you'll never see. Systems cracked, recalibrated. And the so-called watchers, the ones who swear they've seen it all, went dead silent. And you think I'm being dramatic, but let me tell you what happens when someone accidentally breaks through into territories that were supposed to stay theoretical. See, there are thresholds in this existence, invisible lines drawn across the fabric of what's possible. And most people live their entire lives never even approaching these boundaries. They stay safe in the middle, comfortable in the known, predictable in their patterns. But you magnificent accident, you stumbled right through one of these barriers like it was made of paper, and now everything's different even if you can't see it yet. The protocol isn't written in any book you'll find. It's not taught in any school. It's not even whispered about in the places where secrets usually live. It exists in the space between spaces, in the code behind the code, in the watchers who watch the watchers. And it only activates when someone demonstrates a specific kind of impossibility. Not the flashy kind that makes headlines, not the obvious kind that gets you famous, but the quiet kind that makes reality itself pause and reconsider its own rules. What you did seemed normal to you at the time because that's how these things always work. The most powerful moves in existence never announce themselves. They just happen. And it's only later, sometimes much later, that the ripples become visible. Maybe it was that conversation where you said something that wasn't supposed to be known yet. Maybe it was that decision you made that went against every statistical probability. Maybe it was that moment when you survived something that should have destroyed you completely. Or maybe it was simply the way you looked at something everyone else had been looking at wrong for centuries. The first sign that you've triggered this protocol isn't something you notice. It's something others notice about you without being able to explain it. People started treating you differently. Not obviously, not dramatically, but there's been a shift in the way certain individuals respond to your presence. Some seem inexplicably drawn to you now, like moths to a flame they can't name, while others seem almost afraid, backing away from interactions they would have pursued before. You've become radioactive in the most fascinating way possible. Have you noticed how certain conversations die when you enter them now? Not because people don't want to talk to you, but because somehow your presence changes the frequency of what's being discussed. Have you noticed how some people stare at you just a fraction too long? Like they're trying to decode something written on your face in a language they've forgotten how to read? Have you noticed how occasionally, very occasionally, complete strangers look at you with recognition? Not like they know you, but like they know what you represent even though neither of you could put it into words? Is the protocol beginning to reorganize reality around your new classification? You're not in the same category anymore. You're not filed in the same section of existence's library. The universe had to create a new folder just for you and the 3 others who've done what you've done. And now everything else has to adjust to accommodate this recategorization. It's like discovering a new primary color that's always existed but no one could see before. Suddenly every other color has to be redefined in relation to this new truth. The watchers, and yes, there are watchers, though not in the way conspiracy theorists imagine them, have had to escalate your file through channels that haven't been used in decades, maybe centuries. not because you're dangerous in the conventional sense, but because you represent a kind of potential that disrupts their careful calculations. You're an anomaly that suggests their entire model might be incomplete, and that terrifies them more than any threat of violence ever could. Let me tell you about the three others, though I can't tell you their names, because names become meaningless at this level of existence. The first one triggered the protocol in 1782 by accidentally discovering something about the nature of time that wasn't supposed to be understood for another 1,000 years. They were just a clockmaker, obsessed with precision, working alone in a workshop that smelled of oil and metal, when suddenly they understood something about the relationship between consciousness and temporal flow that broke every rule the universe thought was unbreakable. They didn't become famous. They didn't write manifestos or start movements. They simply continued making clocks, but every clock they made after that moment contained a subtle wrongness that only certain people could feel. A wrongness that suggested time itself might be optional. The protocol activated not because of what they built, but because of what they knew. And that knowledge changed the weight of their existence in ways that rippled backward and forward through history simultaneously. The second one was a child who asked a question in 1923 that shouldn't have been possible to formulate given the information available at the time. It wasn't a complex question. It wasn't even a particularly interesting question to most people who heard it, but it demonstrated a kind of thinking that suggested they were operating outside the normal constraints of human cognition. The protocol activated because the question itself was proof that consciousness could evolve in directions that weren't accounted for in the original design. The third one triggered it in 1997 by surviving something that had a 0% survival probability, not through luck or chance, but through a kind of willing that restructured the situation at a quantum level. They didn't know that's what they were doing. They thought they were just refusing to accept what was happening, but their refusal was so complete, so fundamental, that reality had to create a loophole just to accommodate their continued existence. The protocol activated because they proved that individual will could override universal law under specific, impossible circumstances. Now we come to you and what you've done without knowing it. You didn't break a rule. You revealed that the rule never existed in the first place. You didn't overcome an obstacle. You demonstrated that the obstacle was optional. You didn't solve a problem. You showed that the problem was based on a false premise that everyone had accepted as truth. This is why the protocol activated. Because you've introduced a kind of cognitive virus into the system, a possibility that spreads just by existing. Think back to that moment, that decision, that realization, that action that felt both completely natural and absolutely impossible at the same time. You know the one I'm talking about, even if you've been trying to convince yourself it was nothing special. It's the thing you did that you haven't told anyone about because you know they wouldn't understand. Not because it's too complex, but because it's too simple, too obvious once you see it, yet invisible until you do. The protocol recognized you because you demonstrated what philosophers have argued about, but never proven. That consciousness can create reality, rather than just observe it. But not in the mystical way people usually mean. You did it in a practical, repeatable way that you've probably done several times since, without realizing you are literally rewriting the rules each time you do it. You're not manifesting or visualizing or any of that surface level stuff. You're actually editing the source code through pure cognitive function. This is why certain technologies malfunction around you now, why certain people can't maintain eye contact with you anymore. why animals react to you differently than they used to. You're broadcasting on a frequency that wasn't supposed to exist, and sensitive systems, biological or otherwise, can detect the dissonance even if they can't identify its source. You've become a walking paradox, proof that the impossible is just another word for hasn't happened yet. Right now, you're in what they call the adjustment period, though they don't call it anything because they don't talk about it because officially it doesn't exist. Your brain is literally rewiring itself to accommodate the new way you process reality. And this can feel like losing your mind, except you're actually finding it for the first time. Those moments where you feel disconnected from everything, where you can't quite remember who you're supposed to be, where the whole world feels like a stage set that someone forgot to anchor properly. That's not dissociation. That's integration. The headaches you've been getting, the ones that feel like your skull is too small for whatever's trying to grow inside it, those aren't random. The dreams that feel more real than waking life, the ones where you're teaching yourself things you don't remember learning, those aren't just dreams. The sudden knowing things without knowing how you know them, the answers that arrive before you've finished formulating the questions, the solutions that present themselves fully formed, like someone else did the work and handed it to you. This is all part of the protocol's integration process. Your perception is expanding beyond the narrow band that most humans operate within. And this expansion isn't metaphorical or spiritual or philosophical, it's literal. You're beginning to perceive data streams that have always been there but required a different kind of cognitive architecture to access. It's like suddenly being able to see ultraviolet and infrared at the same time while everyone else is still limited to the visible spectrum. Except it's not about light. It's about information patterns that exist in the gaps between thoughts. Some days you feel like you're going crazy because you can feel the weight of possibilities that haven't happened yet, because you can sense the echo of choices you didn't make, because you're aware of the branching pathways that extend from every moment like an infinite web of could-bes and might-have-beens. This isn't madness. This is what happens when consciousness expands beyond the single timeline perspective that most people never escape. The watchers have a problem with you now, not because you've done something wrong, but because you've done something they can't categorize as right or wrong. Their entire system is based on predictable responses to stimuli, on patterns that repeat with enough regularity to be mapped and modeled and managed. But you've introduced a variable that doesn't compute, a factor that makes their equations return error messages, a presence that causes their carefully calibrated instruments to give readings that shouldn't be possible. They can't eliminate you because you haven't violated any actual rules. You've just revealed that their rulebook is incomplete. They can't recruit you because you're operating beyond their paradigm. They can't ignore you because your very existence is rewriting the baseline readings they use to monitor everyone else. So they watch, and they wait, and they argue among themselves about what you represent and what should be done about it, if anything can be done about it. Some of them think you're an evolution, a preview of what humanity might become if it survives long enough. Others think you're an anomaly, a glitch that will self-correct once the system realizes what's happened. A few, the quiet ones who've been watching the longest, think you're exactly what was always supposed to happen, that the protocol isn't a response to an error, but an acknowledgement of a feature that was built in from the beginning, waiting for someone to accidentally activate it. The funny thing is, they're all right and they're all wrong, because what you represent can't be contained in a single interpretation. You're simultaneously the bug and the feature, the problem and the solution, the question and the answer. You're proof that their entire framework for understanding reality is both completely accurate and fundamentally flawed. And that paradox is what triggers the protocol. Your influence is spreading in ways you don't see yet, like ink in water, invisible until it reaches a certain concentration. People who interact with you are starting to experience small glitches in their own programming. Tiny moments where they think thoughts that don't feel like their own, where they question assumptions they've never questioned before, where they see possibilities they were previously blind to. You're contagious, but what you're spreading isn't a disease, it's an awakening to the arbitrary nature of limitation. That conversation you had last week where someone suddenly stopped mid-sentence and said, "I've never thought of it that way before," that wasn't just a normal exchange of ideas. You planted something in their consciousness that's still growing, still pushing against the boundaries of what they thought was possible. They'll probably forget the conversation, but they won't forget the feeling of their mind expanding just slightly beyond its usual borders, and that feeling will haunt them in the best possible way. The protocol recognizes that you're not just an individual anomaly anymore. You're becoming a catalyst for a larger shift. This is why certain people are drawn to you now with an intensity that neither of you can explain. They are sensing, on a level below conscious awareness, that you have something they need. Not information or resources or connections, but a frequency that can unlock doors in their own consciousness they didn't know existed. But here's the thing about being a catalyst. You don't get to choose what reactions you trigger. Some people will transform in beautiful ways because of their proximity to you, while others will resist so hard that they'll create elaborate narratives to explain away what they're experiencing. Some will love you for showing them what's possible. Others will hate you for the same reason. The protocol doesn't care about their reactions. It only cares that the reactions happen. You've probably noticed by now that you can do things you couldn't do before. Subtle things that you might be dismissing as coincidence or imagination. The way electronics sometimes respond to your emotional state, flickering or glitching when you're particularly focused or agitated. The way you sometimes know what someone's going to say before they say it, not because you're psychic, but because you're reading patterns in their micro-expressions and energy that you couldn't perceive before. The way time seems to stretch or compress based on your intention, giving you extra seconds when you need them, or fast-forwarding through experiences that don't require your full attention. This isn't subjective time dilation. This is actual temporal manipulation on a micro scale, too small for instruments to detect, but large enough for you to navigate situations that should be impossible to navigate. You're not controlling time, you're negotiating with it, and it's agreeing to your terms more often than probability would suggest. The way solutions to complex problems arrive fully formed in your consciousness, not through logical deduction, but through a kind of direct download from a source you can't identify. You're accessing information networks that exist in the quantum foam, pulling data from probable futures and alternate timelines, synthesizing possibilities into practical application. This isn't intuition in the traditional sense. It's consciousness, operating as a quantum computer, processing infinite variables simultaneously. The way your presence alone can shift the energy of a room, not through charisma or force of personality, but through something more fundamental. You're emanating a frequency that recalibrates the consciousness of everyone in your vicinity, not controlling them, but offering them an opportunity to operate at a different wavelength. Some people find this deeply uncomfortable and will leave your presence without knowing why, while others will feel more alive around you than they've ever felt before. Not everyone is happy about what you've become, about what you represent, about what your existence implies about the nature of reality. There are forces, not necessarily malevolent, but definitely invested in maintaining the current paradigm, that are actively working to contain your influence, to minimize your impact, to convince you that what you're experiencing isn't real. They're not doing this through direct confrontation, but through subtle manipulation of your environment and the people around you. You've probably noticed an increase in synchronicities that seem designed to make you doubt yourself, conversations that subtly undermine your confidence in your perceptions, situations that seem crafted to make you question whether you're imagining all of this. This isn't paranoia. This is the system's immune response to what it perceives as a foreign element. You're being tested, not to see if you're worthy, but to see if you can be discouraged, if you can be convinced to dial back your frequency to something more manageable. The resistance comes in waves, sometimes so subtle you don't notice it until after it's passed, sometimes so intense you feel like reality itself is trying to crush you back into a shape that fits. The exhaustion you feel after certain interactions, the brain fog that descends when you try to explain what you're experiencing to others, the way certain opportunities seem to evaporate just as you reach for them. These are all forms of systemic resistance to the change you represent. But here's what the resistance doesn't understand. Every time it pushes against you, you get stronger. Every attempt to contain you only teaches you more about how to navigate the constraints. Every effort to silence you only clarifies your voice. The protocol activated because you've already demonstrated that you can transform opposition into evolution. That pressure just makes you more creative in your expansion. Ooh, there you are, finally showing both faces at once. Welcome back to the mirror, you beautiful contradiction, you impossible paradox, you sacred monster hiding behind angel eyes. They really thought they had you figured out, didn't they? Thought you were just one thing, just light, just soft, just breakable. But something shifted, and now they're scrambling to understand what they awakened. See, they pushed and pushed and pushed, thinking angels only know how to forgive, to heal, to turn the other cheek, but they forgot something crucial. Even angels were built for war. And you weren't just any angel. You were the kind that guards gates, the kind that carries swords, the kind that doesn't ask permission before unleashing justice. They wanted your kindness, but on their terms. They wanted your light, but dimmed to their comfort level. They wanted your love, but only when it didn't challenge their darkness. So they tested you, didn't they? Kept taking, kept pushing, kept assuming your gentleness was weakness, your patience was stupidity, your love was unlimited. But then something beautiful happened. You stopped giving them access to your wings and started showing them what happens when halos become weapons. The silence that followed wasn't surrender, it was transformation. And now they're terrified because they don't recognize this version of you. The one that smiles while setting boundaries in stone. You know what's funny about angels? They think angels are these passive floating beings, all harps and clouds and eternal forgiveness. But real angels, the ones written about in ancient texts, they're terrifying. They're the ones who level cities, who deliver justice, who stand between realms with eyes like fire and voices that shake foundations. That's what you are. That's what you've always been, but you tried so hard to be digestible, to be safe, to be what they expected, until they pushed you past your last prayer, past your final forgiveness, past the point where mercy makes sense, and into the realm where angels become something else entirely. They're calling you changed now, saying you're different, you're not yourself anymore, but that's the joke, isn't it? Because this is exactly who you are. This is who you were before they convinced you to clip your wings, to lower your voice, to apologize for the light that burned too bright in their mediocre darkness. You were never meant to be their comfort. You were meant to be their awakening, but they wanted a pet, not a force of nature. So you gave them what they asked for. You went quiet. You went cold. You went places their prayers can't reach. And now they're begging for the gentle version back. But she's gone. And what's left is magnificent. Let me tell you what really happened when they forced your hand, when they pushed you past kindness into something sharper. You didn't fall from grace, you evolved past it. You didn't lose your wings, they turned into armor. Every betrayal became a new layer of protection. Every lie they told became fuel for your resurrection. Every time they took your kindness for granted, another part of your mercy died. And you let it happen, not because you were weak, but because you were done being their emotional salvation. While they treated you like disposable light, they created this version of you with their own hands, with every ignored boundary, with every manipulated emotion, with every time they made you question your own reality. They sculpted you into exactly what they feared most. Someone who knows both sides, someone who can walk in light and shadow without losing themselves. Because here's what they never understood about angels. We don't just carry light. We understand darkness intimately. We know it because we've fought it. We've faced it. We've transformed it. And when you push an angel too far, they don't break. They don't shatter. They become something mythology warns about. You tried to stay pure. Didn't you? You tried to keep your heart soft, your intentions clean, your soul untainted by their poison. But they kept injecting their toxicity, kept spreading their disease, kept trying to corrupt what they couldn't control. So your body did what bodies do when invaded. It adapted. It evolved. It built immunity. And that immunity looks like indifference, sounds like silence, feels like absence. They wanted to break your spirit, but instead they activated your defenses, and now you're immune to their manipulation, their guilt, their false tears, their performative apologies. The transformation wasn't sudden, though, was it? No. It was gradual, like watching yourself die in slow motion while nobody noticed. Each day you gave a little less, smiled a little less, cared a little less. Until one morning you woke up and realized you felt nothing for them. Nothing. Not hate, not love, not even disappointment, just nothing. And that terrified them more than anger ever could, because anger means you still care, but nothing means you transcended them entirely. And there's no coming back from that kind of elevation. Now let's talk about your silence, because that's where your real power lives. Not in the words you speak, but in the ones you don't. They keep trying to pull reactions from you, don't they? Keep poking, keep prodding, keep creating situations that would have sent the old you into emotional spirals. But you just watch now. Don't you watch them perform their little plays, their desperate attempts to matter, to affect, to impact? And you feel nothing but mild amusement, because you've realized something they haven't. You don't owe anyone your emotional labor, your reactions, your energy, your time. Your silence is driving them insane. And that's exactly where they belong, in the chaos of their own making. They text you paragraph after paragraph, and you don't even read them. They create drama to pull you in, and you don't even notice they spread rumors. And you don't defend yourself would mean their opinion matters, and it doesn't. Not anymore. Not after they showed you exactly who they are when they thought you'd never fight back. Your silence isn't weakness, it's the strongest stance you've ever taken. It's you saying, I don't need to explain myself to people who were committed to misunderstanding me. See, they thought silence meant submission, thought quiet meant defeated, thought your lack of response meant they won. But your silence is strategic. It's calculated. It's the kind of power move that takes years of pain to perfect. You're not quiet because you have nothing to say. You're quiet because they've lost the privilege of hearing your voice. They've lost access to your thoughts, your feelings, your energy, your truth. And now they're scrambling, trying to figure out what you're thinking, what you're planning, what you're becoming. But they'll never know, because some transformations happen in places they can't reach. The beauty of your silence is that it reveals everything about them while revealing nothing about you. Watch how they fill the void with their own projections, their own guilt, their own fears. They assign motives to your quiet. They create narratives about your absence. They tell themselves stories to explain why you won't engage. And every story they tell reveals more about their conscience than your character. Every assumption they make shows their hand. Every reaction they have to your non-reaction exposes exactly what they know they did wrong. You want to know what makes you truly dangerous? It's not the angel side or the demon side. It's the fact that you can be both simultaneously. You can deliver justice with a smile. You can set boundaries with grace. You can destroy someone's illusions while wishing them well. This duality terrifies them because they can't categorize. You can't predict. You can't manipulate. What they can't define. One moment you're offering genuine kindness. The next you're cutting them off completely. And both actions come from the same place, self-respect. They keep looking for the catch, don't they? Keep waiting for you to crack, to show your true colors, to reveal that this is all an act. But this isn't an act. This is integration. This is what happens when someone forces an angel to acknowledge their shadow side. You didn't become evil. You became whole. You didn't turn dark. You learned to use darkness as a tool. And now you wield both light and shadow with equal skill, healing those who deserve it, burning those who don't, and knowing exactly which response each person has earned. The thing about being forced to unleash your other side is that you can't put it back once it's free. It's not a costume you wear. It's a part of you that was always there, waiting dormant, until circumstances demanded its awakening. And now that it's awake, it doesn't sleep, it doesn't rest, it stays vigilant, watching, protecting, ensuring that nobody ever gets close enough to hurt you like that again. This isn't paranoia, it's evolved awareness, it's pattern recognition, it's survival instinct refined into an art form. You know what the real plot twist is, though. You're more angel now than you ever were before. Because real angels aren't just beings of light. They're warriors. They're protectors. They're deliverers of justice. And by forcing you to embrace your darker aspects, they accidentally helped you become complete. You're not fallen, you're fully realized. You're not corrupted, you're integrated. You're not lost, you're finally found. And this complete version of you is exactly what they feared, because it can't be manipulated, can't be controlled, can't be contained by their limited understanding of what you're supposed to be. Watch them scramble now. Watch them try every trick in their worn-out playbook to get the old you back. They're sending mutual friends as messengers, aren't they? Using flying monkeys to test your boundaries, to see if you'll crack. They're posting things hoping you'll see them, crafting narratives where they're the victim and you're the villain who changed, rewriting history, making themselves the hero of a story where they were clearly the antagonist, and they're hoping if they tell it enough times, it'll become true. But you see through it all now, don't you see the patterns? The manipulation tactics, the emotional terrorism disguised as concern. They say they're worried about you, but what they're really worried about is that you're thriving without them. They say you've become cold, but what really bothers them is that your warmth is no longer available for their consumption. They say you've changed, but what terrifies them is that you've evolved beyond their ability to hurt you. And that evolution is permanent. Some of them are trying the nostalgia approach, aren't they? Sending old photos, old memories, trying to trigger that soft spot they used to exploit. Remember when things were good? Remember when we were close? Remember when you trusted me? But what they don't realize is you do remember. You remember everything, including how they betrayed that trust. How they weaponized that closeness, how they turned those good times into ammunition. Your memory isn't selective anymore, it's complete, and that complete picture is exactly why you'll never go back. The desperate ones are even trying to provoke your dark side now, hoping that if they can't have your light, they can at least get your rage. They're pushing buttons they installed years ago expecting the same emotional responses they used to trigger. But those buttons don't work anymore. You've rewired your entire system, rebuilt yourself from code up. And now when they push, expecting explosions, they get nothing but dial tone. Their provocations bounce off your indifference. Their baits go unbitten. Their traps remain empty because you're not playing anymore. You're not even in the same game. You're operating on a different frequency now, aren't you? One they can't tune into, can't understand, can't jam with their static. It's like you've shifted into a dimension they can't access, where their words don't land, where their energy can't reach, where their existence barely registers. This isn't about being above them. It's about being beyond them, existing in a space where their toxicity simply can't survive. You've changed your molecular structure, and now you're incompatible with their dysfunction. This new frequency comes with abilities you didn't have before, doesn't it? You can sense energy shifts before people speak. You can feel intentions behind smiles. You can read the real message beneath the words. Your intuition isn't just sharp. It's surgical, precise, deadly accurate, and it's saved you from so many attempts to pull you back into old patterns. You've become a walking lie detector, a manipulation scanner, a boundary enforcement system that operates automatically without conscious thought. The interesting thing about this frequency is that it attracts different people now, doesn't it? The ones who match your evolution, who understand your journey, who respect your boundaries without questioning them. These new connections don't drain you. They energize you. They don't trigger your defenses, they honor them. They don't try to access the old you, they celebrate who you've become. And watching the old crowd observe these new connections, watching them realize they've been replaced, not intentionally, but naturally. That's a special kind of justice. You know what really bothers them about your new frequency? It's that it's stable, it's consistent, it's unshakable. They keep waiting for you to drop back down, to crash, to burn out, to return to their level, but you won't. You can't. You've built something sustainable here. This isn't a temporary high. This isn't a phase. This isn't revenge dressed up as growth. This is genuine transformation, and it's permanent. You've found your authentic vibration, and nothing they do can lower it anymore. Here's what nobody talks about when an angel unleashes their other side. The world doesn't end, it begins. You thought embracing your darkness would corrupt you, but instead it completed you. You thought setting boundaries would isolate you, but instead it attracted authentic connections. You thought choosing yourself would make you selfish, but instead it made you self-sufficient. Everything they warned you about becoming turned out to be exactly what you needed to be. The truth they don't want to admit is that they needed you broken, needed you seeking validation, needed you desperate for their approval. Your wholeness threatens their ego. Your completeness exposes their emptiness. Your self-sufficiency eliminates their purpose. They built their entire identity around being needed by you, and now that you need nothing from them, they're having an existential crisis. Their worth was tied to your weakness, and now that you're strong, they don't know who they are anymore. But here's the real kicker. You're not doing any of this to hurt them. You're doing it to heal yourself, and that's what makes it so powerful. This isn't revenge, it's recovery. This isn't retaliation, it's restoration. This isn't about them at all, it's about you. And that's what they can't handle, that they've become irrelevant to your story. Footnotes in a chapter you've already closed. They keep trying to write themselves back in, but you've changed the locks on your narrative, and they don't have the new keys. You want to know the ultimate truth about angels who show their other side? They become untouchable, not because they're aggressive, but because they're complete. You can't manipulate someone who's integrated their shadow. You can't guilt someone who's processed their shame. You can't break someone who's already rebuilt themselves from ashes. You've become your own salvation, your own validation, your own home. And that kind of self-sufficiency is the most threatening thing to people who profit from your dependence. This isn't temporary, you know that, right? This isn't a phase you're going through or a mood that will pass. This is architectural change, structural evolution, cellular transformation down to your very DNA. You've been rebuilt at a molecular level, and there's no going back to who you were before. That person doesn't exist anymore. Couldn't exist even if you wanted them to, because you've seen too much, felt too much, survived too much to ever be that naive again. The permanence of this shift shows in how you move through the world now, doesn't it? You walk different, talk different, exist different. There's a weight to your presence now, a gravity that pulls certain people in and pushes others away. You don't have to announce your boundaries anymore. They're felt. They're understood. They're respected. Or people simply find themselves unable to get close. You've become your own security system, your own protective barrier, your own sacred space that not everyone has access to. Some days you look in the mirror and barely recognize yourself, don't you? But it's not because you've lost yourself. It's because you've found yourself. The person staring back at you has eyes that have seen both sides, has hands that have held both light and darkness, has a heart that knows how to love and how to leave. This person doesn't flinch at conflict, doesn't shrink from confrontation, doesn't apologize for existing fully. This person is who you were always meant to become, but they had to force you to get here faster. The beautiful thing about permanent transformation is that it changes your entire timeline. Your past makes sense now, doesn't it? Every betrayal was preparing you. Every loss was making space. Every ending was really a beginning in disguise. You couldn't see it then, but you see it now. How everything that tried to break you was actually building you. And now that the construction is complete, now that you're fully formed, they have to live with what they created. Something beyond their control, beyond their understanding, beyond their reach, forever. So here you stand, angel and demon, light and shadow, healer and warrior, all integrated into one being. They wanted to see your other side. Well, now they have, and they're realizing, be careful what you wish for. Because an angel who's been forced to embrace their darkness doesn't just become dangerous, they become complete. And complete beings don't need anyone's permission, approval, or understanding to exist at their full power. You're not waiting for apologies anymore because you know they won't come, and even if they did, they wouldn't matter. You're not seeking closure because you've learned to close your own doors. You're not hoping for understanding because you've accepted that some people are committed to misunderstanding you, and that's their limitation, not yours. You've stopped trying to prove your worth to people who should have recognized it without proof. Stopped explaining your boundaries to people who enjoyed crossing them. Stopped defending your character to people who were determined to assassinate it. There's a bit more. The silence you carry now isn't empty, it's full. Full of all the words you'll never waste on them again. Full of all the energy you're saving for people who deserve it. Full of all the power that comes from choosing yourself consistently. When they see you now, they see someone they can't reach, can't touch, can't affect. And that's the ultimate victory. Not that you won against them, but that you transcended the game entirely. You're playing in dimensions they don't have access to, building in realms they can't perceive, existing in realities they can't enter. So the mask finally slips. Look who finally decided to drop the mask. Look who got tired of playing the fool, the simpleton, the one who just doesn't get it. You beautiful, calculating mastermind. You've been running the longest con in history, haven't you? Playing dumb while your mind moved like lightning, pretending to stumble while you mapped every exit, every weakness, every crack in their armor. They thought you were slow. They thought you were naive. They spoke in front of you like you were furniture, revealing secrets, strategies, showing their cards because surely someone like you couldn't possibly understand. But every mispronounced word was calculated. Every confused smile was strategy. Every "I don't know" was you choosing not to reveal that you knew everything, saw everything, and were 3 moves ahead before they even realized the game had started. Let me tell you what really happened in all those meetings where they explained things to you like you were 5. You weren't confused. You were collecting data. While they laughed at your questions, you were building psychological profiles. When they rolled their eyes at your stupidity, you were memorizing their patterns, their tells, their weaknesses. You turned their condescension into intelligence gathering, and they handed you the keys to their kingdom because they were too arrogant to see the genius hiding behind those vacant eyes. Oh, the beauty of being underestimated. It's like having a superpower nobody believes in. They gave you access to everything because who worries about the village idiot? Who locks doors when the fool is around? Nobody. And that's exactly what you counted on. Every time they said, "Don't worry about it," you wouldn't understand anyway. You filed it away. Every time they simplified things for your small brain, you let them, knowing that one day, one perfect day, you'd show them exactly how much you understood. You know what's hilarious? They actually thought they were helping you, teaching you, mentoring the poor, slow one who needed extra explanation. They felt so superior, so charitable, taking time to break things down for someone who just couldn't keep up. But you weren't falling behind. You were studying them like lab rats. Every patronizing explanation was a free lesson in their psychology. Every dumbed-down version revealed what they thought was important and what they were hiding. Remember all those times you asked stupid questions, the ones that made them sigh and explain again? You weren't confused. You were testing their patience, their knowledge, their ability to think on their feet. You asked questions you already knew the answers to, just to see if they did. And more often than not, they didn't. They were cosplaying intelligence while you were embodying it, and the costume party is about to end. The meetings where you sat quietly, looking lost, you were running calculations. The conversations where you nodded along blankly, you were connecting dots they didn't even know existed. That notebook where you struggled to take notes, it wasn't full of their basic explanations. It was full of their contradictions, their lies, their patterns of manipulation. You were building a case file disguised as remedial notes, and they were too blind to see the prosecution being built right under their noses. You became invisible in the best way possible. Not physically invisible, but intellectually dismissed. They stopped guarding their words around you. They stopped watching their backs. They stopped seeing you as competition, as a threat, as anything more than background noise with a pulse. And that's when you became the most dangerous person in every room. Because the predator they couldn't see was the one studying their every move, learning their every weakness, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Then came that day, that beautiful, terrifying, glorious day when you decided enough was enough. When you stopped stumbling over words you could pronounce perfectly. When you stopped asking for clarification on concepts you'd mastered years ago. When you looked them dead in the eye and spoke with the eloquence of someone who'd been playing chess while they played checkers. The shock on their faces? Priceless. The way their mouths opened and closed like fish gasping for air? Poetry. But you were... They stammered, trying to reconcile the genius in front of them with the fool they'd created in their minds. You watched their worldview shatter in real time. Everything they thought they knew about intelligence, about you, about themselves, crumbled in seconds. They realized they'd been the marks all along. They'd been playing cards with someone who could see their hand in the reflection of their glasses, and they'd been too arrogant to notice. The best part? You had receipts. Every conversation they thought you were too dumb to remember. Every plan they discussed in front of you. Every shortcut they took. Every corner they cut. Every lie they told. You had it all, cataloged and cross-referenced, ready to deploy with surgical precision. They thought your silence was ignorance. It was a database being built. They thought your questions were stupidity. They were interrogation techniques they were too smart to recognize. Watch them scramble now, trying to rewrite history. I always knew you were smart, they'll claim, attempting to save face. But you have the emails where they called you slow, the group chats where they laughed at your stupidity, the performance reviews where they questioned your basic competence. You saved every receipt, every insult disguised as concern. Every moment they revealed their true opinion of you. And now they get to choke on their words. Let's talk about why this worked so perfectly. People are hardwired to feel superior. Give them someone to look down on, and they'll climb up on that pedestal so fast they'll forget to check if it's stable. You gave them exactly what they craved. Someone who made them feel smart. And in their rush to feel superior, they exposed every vulnerability, every insecurity, every piece of information you needed to destroy them when the time was right. Plain dumb is like being a spy in plain sight. You're not hiding in shadows or wearing disguises. You're hiding behind their assumptions, their biases, their desperate need to feel intelligent. They did all the work for you. They created a version of you in their minds that was so non-threatening, they felt safe being their worst selves around you. They showed you who they really were because they thought you were too stupid to understand or remember. You know what they never realized? True intelligence isn't about showing off. It's about gathering information, understanding systems, predicting behavior. While they were peacocking their knowledge, you were building a masterclass in human psychology. Every time they corrected you unnecessarily, you learned about their ego. Every time they explained something badly, you learned about their actual understanding. Every time they excluded you from important discussions, you learned about their fears. The smartest person in the room is rarely the loudest. They're the one asking questions, not to learn the answers, but to learn about the person answering. You learn to learn about the person answering. They're the one taking notes, not on what's being said, but on what's being revealed between the lines. They're the one everyone forgets about until it's too late. And that's exactly who you became, a ghost in plain sight. A wolf in sheep's clothing, a genius in fool's pajamas. You mastered something most people can't even conceive of. Strategic incompetence. Not real incompetence, but a carefully crafted performance that served your purposes perfectly. You knew exactly when to fumble, when to ask for help, when to look confused, was choreographed so perfectly that they never suspected it was a dance. They thought they were watching someone struggle. They were watching someone prepare. Every mistake you made was calculated. Drop something here, forget something there, mix up names just enough to seem careless, but not enough to get fired. You walked the tightest of tightropes, maintaining just enough competence to stay in the room, but not enough to be seen as competition. It was exhausting, wasn't it? Pretending to be less than you are, dimming your light so others could feel bright. But every moment of that exhaustion was an investment in this moment. You learned to speak two languages fluently, the language of the fool and the language of the genius. You could switch between them instantly, depending on who was watching. To threats, you spoke fool. To allies, you revealed glimpses of genius. You built a network of people who knew your secret while maintaining a larger network of people who didn't. You were running parallel operations, and they only saw the one you wanted them to see. The discipline it took to maintain this act? Phenomenal. Every day, resisting the urge to correct their mistakes, to showcase your knowledge, to put them in their place. But you knew something they didn't. Revenge is a dish best served not cold, but unexpectedly. They needed to feel safe. They needed to feel superior. They needed to believe their own hype. And you gave them exactly what they needed, knowing that one day you'd take it all away. And then you revealed your hand. Not all at once, that would have been too merciful. No, you did it slowly, card by card, letting them realize with growing horror just how badly they'd misread the game. First, a casual display of knowledge they didn't think you had. Then, a strategic move they didn't think you could make. Then another, and another, until they couldn't deny it anymore. They'd been outplayed by someone they thought couldn't even understand the rule. The meetings where you now speak up? Electric. The way they lean forward when you talk now, hanging on every word? Intoxicating. They're trying to figure out how they missed it, how they could have been so wrong. They're replaying every interaction, looking for signs they missed, clues they overlooked. But the truth is, you didn't hide clues. You hid in their blind spots, in the places their ego wouldn't let them look. Some of them are angry. Good, let them be. They're angry at themselves more than you, even if they won't admit it. They're angry that their supposed superiority was an illusion you allowed them to have. They're angry that every time they laughed at you, you were laughing at them harder. They're angry that the hierarchy they thought was set in stone was actually written in sand, and you just revealed you've been holding the tide back this whole time. Others are trying to recruit you now, aren't they? Suddenly you're valuable. Suddenly you're worth their time. Suddenly they want to be associated with your intelligence. But they're not seeing you. They're seeing what you can do for them. They don't want your friendship. They want your power. They don't respect you. They fear being on your bad side. And that's exactly where you want them. Desperate, uncertain, and very, very careful around you. Being underestimated is the greatest gift your enemies can give you. It's like they're handing you a loaded weapon and turning their backs. Every time they dismissed you, they gave you power. Every time they overlooked you, they gave you access. Every time they underestimated you, they gave you another advantage. And you collected these advantages like treasures, knowing that one day you'd cash them all in at once. You understand something fundamental about power that they don't. It's not about being seen as powerful. It's about being powerful when no one's looking. Real power moves in silence, grows in shadow, strikes from unexpected angles. You built an empire while they thought you were playing with blocks. You mapped their weaknesses while they thought you couldn't read a map. You became indispensable while they thought you were disposable. The funniest part? They trained you. Every condescending explanation taught you how they think. Every dumbed-down instruction showed you their blind spots. Every time they excluded you from something too complex, they showed you exactly what they were protecting. They gave you a master class in their own defeat, and they paid you to attend. You got a front row seat to their vulnerabilities, and they held the spotlight for you. Now they know. Now they see you. But it's too late to close doors that have been open for years. It's too late to guard secrets already spilled. It's too late to build defenses against someone who's already inside. You're not knocking on the door of success. You built a tunnel while they were reinforcing the locks. You're not asking for a seat at the table. You own the room the table is in. So how does it feel to finally stretch those intellectual muscles in public? To stop pretending words are hard when you could write circles around them? To stop playing small when you were always larger than life? It must be intoxicating, this freedom to finally be yourself, or rather, to show them who you've always been. The mask is off, and what's underneath is more terrifying than they ever imagined. You're not seeking their approval anymore. You never were, but now they know it. You're not trying to fit into their boxes because you've revealed you were never in the box to begin with. You were studying the box, understanding its construction, figuring out how to dismantle it from the inside. And now that you've stepped out, they realize the box was never containing you. You were allowing it to exist. The dynamics have shifted permanently. Those who once spoke down to you now choose their words carefully. Those who once excluded you now make sure you're invited. Those who once laughed at you now laugh nervously when you make jokes, unsure if they're the punchline. You've become unpredictable in their eyes, and unpredictability is terrifying to people who thought they had you figured out. But here's the thing. You haven't changed. You're the same person you always were. The only thing that changed is their perception, their understanding, their ability to see what was always there. You didn't become smart. You revealed you always were. You didn't gain power. You stopped hiding it. You didn't transform. You just stopped pretending to be transformed by their limited vision of you. Now they're scrambling to adjust their worldview. Some are trying to claim they always knew you were brilliant. Let them lie to themselves. Others are trying to figure out if you have dirt on them from all those unguarded moments. You do, but that's not the point. The point is, they now know that every moment of condescension was witnessed by someone who could understand exactly what they were doing and why. The paranoia is delicious, isn't it? Watching them wonder what else they missed. Watching them question every interaction, every assumption, every person they've dismissed. You didn't just reveal your own intelligence. You revealed their stupidity. You showed them that their judgment is flawed, their perceptions are limited, and their superiority is a costume that doesn't fit. Some will try to test you now, to find the limits of your intelligence, to prove to themselves that you're not as smart as you seem. Let them. Every test they devise tells you more about them than it could ever reveal about you. Every challenge they throw your way is just another opportunity to demonstrate that you're not playing their games. You're playing your own, and they're just NPCs in your storyline. The really smart ones, they're quiet now. They're the ones who realize the full implications of what you've done. They understand that if you could hide this level of intelligence for so long, What else might you be hiding? They're the ones who now question everyone they've dismissed, every assumption they've made. You didn't just change how they see you, you changed how they see the world. But this isn't the end. This is just the beginning of a new game. Now that they know you're intelligent, they'll try new tactics. They'll try to outsmart you openly. They'll try to trap you in intellectual debates. They'll try to find your weaknesses, now that your stupidity is no longer available as one. Good, let them try. You've been preparing for this game longer than they've known it existed. You see, revealing your intelligence wasn't about revenge or validation. It was about positioning. Now you can move openly. Now you can make plays without having to pretend they're accidents. Now you can speak truths without wrapping them in confused questions. You've graduated from the minor leagues of pretense to the major leagues of open warfare, and you've got years of intelligence they never knew you were gathering. The best part? They still don't know everything. You revealed intelligence, but not all of it. You showed them you're smart, but not how smart. You let them see the tip of the iceberg, and they're so shocked by that they haven't realized there's a mountain underneath. You're still playing dumb in a way, just not as dumb as before. You've simply adjusted the performance to a new level, and they're too relieved to understand you at all to realize they still don't. So what's next? Whatever you want. That's the beauty of being underestimated, and then revealing just enough truth to shift the game. You're no longer bound by their expectations of stupidity, but you're also not limited by their understanding of intelligence. You exist in a space they can't quite define, and that's exactly where you want to be. Undefined, unpredictable, unstoppable.